My best friend rejected me, saying she was too much for me to handle. Now that I found someone else and am dating, she's mad at me and calling me a traitor. I've had a best friend for about 6 years, and we used to talk almost every day. We were really close, and for the last 3 years, I've been telling her I had feelings for her. However, she always brushed it off, made jokes, or said she'd think about it, but never gave me a direct answer. This was tough, especially since she never outright rejected me, but also never accepted me, leaving me hanging as if she was still deciding. Recently, I couldn't take it anymore. At a party, I saw her leave with another guy, which crushed me. The next day, I asked her to talk and told her I needed to know if she wanted something serious. I said if she didn't want it, she just needed to say so, and I'd let it go, but I couldn't handle her stringing me along. Once again, she said she was still thinking and didn't want to be rushed. This time, I insisted on an answer and she got mad, saying she was out of my league and would never actually want me. She said being my friend was more than enough, so I should stop bothering her. Her words shook me because she'd always acted somewhat interested, so I didn't know where this was coming from. I told her that was fine and left. After that, though she tried to talk normally, I was already thinking of cutting contact. Now, 3 months later, I'm seeing someone else. I wasn't looking, still feeling down, but this amazing girl came into my life. We're not officially dating yet, but we're close, and I've almost moved on from my friend. Surprisingly, my friend has been giving me a hard time, saying I'm forgetting about her. I didn't want to throw it in her face, but I was tempted after everything she put me through. Recently, at a party with the girl I'm seeing, my friend saw us. Later, I found my phone flooded with messages from her accusing me of faking my feelings and moving on too easily. I reminded her our last conversation ended with her humiliating me, so of course I moved on. She insisted she was still thinking about it and felt like I cheated on her by moving on without telling her. She demanded to talk in person, but I told her there was nothing to discuss. Ignoring me, she said she was already on her way to my house. I knew this confrontation wouldn't go well, but I waited. Soon she arrived, knocking loudly. I opened the door, and there she stood, eyes filled with anger and hurt, on the verge of tears. She blurted, "Why did you do this to me? You said you liked me. How could you be with someone else now?" I let her in, closing the door behind us, and replied bitterly, "How did I do this to you? I spent years trying to be with you, asking for honesty. You threw me aside, told me to forget it. So why, now that I'm moving on, do you act like I owe you something?" She stood silently, her anger turning into insecurity. Finally, she whispered, "I just didn't know what I wanted. But seeing you with her, I realized I could lose you." Her words, ones I'd longed to hear, felt empty and too late. I looked at her and said, "You don't get it. It's not that you want me. You just don't want me with anyone else. You liked knowing I'd always be there, but now that I'm finding happiness elsewhere, it bothers you. This isn't love. It's ego. You don't want to lose control." Stunned, she started to cry, and for the first time it seemed like she understood. Even then, she tried to argue. "That's not true. I was just confused." I raised my hand, signaling for her stop. I didn't want to hear any more empty excuses. It doesn't matter now. I'm over it. I found someone who really wants to be with me, who makes me feel valued without me having to beg for it, and honestly, I deserve that. I deserve someone who won't leave me waiting while they decide if I'm good enough. You rejected me, and I accepted that. Now I'm moving on, and you need to accept that too. She tried to step closer, holding onto my arm, her eyes wide in a last desperate attempt. "Please give me another chance. I can be that person for you, I promise. I just didn't realize it before, but now I know what I want." I gently but firmly pulled away. I felt sad but not regretful. This was the closure I needed, even if it was painful. You had all the chances. I gave you everything I could, and you didn't want it. Now it's too late. I don't feel the same way anymore, and I can't keep being your backup plan. I hope you find what you're looking for. but it won't be with me." She stood there motionless as I opened the door for her to leave. Her eyes were filled with tears, and I could see that she finally understood that she had lost. I didn't want to be cruel, but I knew I had to be firm. "Goodbye," I said simply, and without another word, she left, sobbing quietly. I closed the door behind her and let out a deep sigh, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. It was as if a great weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. I knew that in the end I had done what was best for myself. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. A few hours later, I sent a message to the girl I was seeing. I wanted to see her, to be close to someone who genuinely cared for me without any games or insecurities. When she replied, saying she wanted to see me too, I smiled, feeling genuine happiness, knowing I was finally on the right path to being happy without looking back. After that confrontation, I finally felt like a chapter of my life had closed. For the first time in years, I wasn't stuck in an endless game of uncertainty and expectations. I had something real and solid now, and even though I felt a bit sad closing the door on my old friend, I knew it was the best thing for me. The days became lighter. I started dedicating myself truly to the relationship with the girl who had come into my life so unexpectedly. She was fun, honest, and above all, genuinely cared about me. There were no secrets, no confusion about feelings. Things were how they should be, easy and clear. Every time I saw her, the sense of well-being grew, and I realized that I was finally free from the chains of the past. Eventually, we officially started dating. We had so much in common, but also enough differences to keep things interesting. She challenged me to be better, and I supported her in every way I could. I felt like I was finally building something meaningful with someone who truly wanted to be by my side. I met her family and she met mine. Slowly, our lives intertwined, and I realized that this was what I had always wanted, someone who loved me fully, without fear of expressing how they felt. While I moved on with my life, I started to hear some things about my old friend. It wasn't something I sought out, but mutual friends ended up mentioning her. Apparently, after our argument, she began distancing herself from our group. She wasn't as present at parties or gatherings, and when she did show up, she always seemed distant. Some friends said she seemed down, had started drinking more than usual, and seemed to be avoiding people. I had mixed feelings about it. Part of me worried about her. After all, despite everything, we had been friends for many years. But another part of me couldn't forget all she had done, how she had manipulated me and discarded me so many times. She always thought she was in control, thought I'd always be there waiting, and now that I had moved on, it seemed like her world was falling apart. One night, while my girlfriend and I were at dinner with some friends, one of them mentioned they had seen my old friend at a bar, completely drunk and crying. He said it casually, just commenting on how different she seemed. My girlfriend, who knew the whole story, squeezed my hand under the table, as if to say that I didn't need to pay attention to that. And she was right. I shouldn't let myself get dragged back to the past. But I couldn't help the bitter feeling. She always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, that she was out of my league, and now she was the one hitting rock bottom while I was finally finding happiness. A few weeks later, I received a message from her. It was the first time she had reached out since that night she came to my house. The message was short, just asking to talk. I stared at the screen, wondering what I should do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, simply delete the message and move on. But another part knew that maybe she genuinely needed help. However, I couldn't be that person for her. I couldn't go back to being the safety net that she had discarded so many times. I decided to respond simply. I told her that I hoped she was doing well, but that I didn't think it would be a good idea for us to meet. I was honest. I had moved on, I was happy, and I didn't think it was fair to my girlfriend to reopen old wounds. I wished her the best and ended the conversation there. She didn't reply, and I knew that probably hurt her, but it was the best thing for both of us. Over time, the stories about her became less frequent. I stopped hearing about her drunken nights or failed relationships. She seemed to have disappeared from our social circle, and I didn't make an effort to find out where she was. It wasn't out of a lack of empathy, but because I knew that to truly be happy, I needed to leave all of that behind. My life, on the other hand, kept getting better. My career was advancing, my relationship was strong, and I was surrounded by people who valued me. My girlfriend and I decided to move into an apartment together, a place just for us, and that brought a sense of a fresh start that I so badly needed. Every day I felt like I was building a new version of myself, more confident, more secure, happier. Sometimes, when I was alone and my mind wandered, I would wonder what would have happened if she had been honest with me from the start. Maybe we would have worked out, maybe not. But then I looked at my current life and knew that I was exactly where I needed to be. That uncertainty, that constant maybe, was left behind. Now I had something concrete, something real. I heard about her again almost a year later. A mutual friend mentioned that she had moved to another city, apparently trying to start over. He said she was working at a job she didn't really like and living alone. When I asked if she seemed okay, he hesitated before saying that she seemed more lost than ever. It was sad, of course, but there was nothing more I could do. I had tried to be there for her for so many years, and she never gave me the space. Looking at it all, I realized that sometimes some people just aren't ready to receive the love we want to give. I loved her truly, but she wasn't ready for it. And now, after everything, I knew I deserved someone who was ready to love me back, and I had found that person. As I got ready for dinner with my girlfriend, watching her smile while she talked about our future plans, I felt a deep sense of peace. I left the past where it belonged and embraced the present that I had finally earned.